Good morning, ladies. I'm so happy that you are here, and I'll tell you. As she already kind of let you know a little bit about myself, but I'll just share a little bit about why this work is so important to me. We've all taken our different journeys and paths, and I hear that some of you are entrepreneurs, and so you guys can, I'm sure you can relate to the ups and downs of what that can look like, and how some days, I know for me, as an entrepreneur, there's some days like I just want to get on somebody's clock and have a guaranteed paycheck. That's just all I want. And so I don't, maybe you guys have felt that way, but there's something that happens that's really magical when you really step into your purpose and trusting that your purpose is going to lead you to your greatest good, your greatest self, within your community, within who you are, appreciating who you are, loving who you are. And so, me, as much as I tried to run from being the entrepreneur that I am, it always brought me back to that same place of just, this is what you do, this is what you're good at. You are good at kind of just going into spaces and bringing out the best piece of that space, or highlighting what's the best or highest good in that thing. And so that's what I want to do here today. um, and as she mentioned, I'm not interested in changing who you are. I'm not interested in telling you to be something different or to pull on something different. But what I want to do is I want you to look at just who you are and who you've been, and also what nature is and what your environment is around you. And I want you to pull on different things to bring out your best self. Just like if you saw in the Facebook group the witch hazel. So that's why they played the song "I'm Coming Out," because with witch hazel, we're pulling out the best parts of yourself. It's an astringent. So I want to be your astringent today. You're not here for me, you're here for yourself, right? So thank you for showing up for yourself today. So, permaculture and what does life by design mean? I want to talk about that for a second. And then I'm going to kind of walk you through just kind of ideally what makes up a, a a good, I don't want to say a good life because I feel like that's so cliche, because we're not talking about, I want my life to be good, but it's just about what is the formula that makes up the best life that you can have, or the best person that you can be, right? And so we're going to look at a different kind of a way to comprehend that. So what does life by design mean? In permaculture, we believe that a garden should be created based on what nature is already showing us, right? So in your own personal life, um, you want to do the same thing. You don't want to go into a space and say, I want this to be like this, and I want, like, you didn't wake up in the morning. Well, most of us did. We woke up and we said, I want this to look like this, and I want these earrings, and I want this head wrap, and I want my nails to look like this, and I want this shirt, and all of those things. And so, and I'm sorry if you guys hear background noise. I have a little one and she's throwing a little fit. So if you guys are mothers, you get it. Um, but so we wake up and we decide, like, this is what I want my vessel to be. This is what I want it to look like. This is how I want it to feel, or how I want it to be presented. But oftentimes we neglect the fact that this space that we're living in, it has a message for us. It's telling us something on a daily basis. So one of the key phrases I use, I say, don't be a colonizer of your own environment or your own backyard, right? So when we garden, we colonize. We go in and we say, this needs to be like this, and I want this like this, and I want this landscaping right here. But the same way with your own soul and your own body, you can sit with yourself and you can say, you know um, what do you want me to be? How do you want me to show up today? What is it that I need? How can I show up for my own greatest good? So that is a different kind of a focal point. So we're going to get into that a little bit. So that's kind of the basis of permaculture and doing life by design. It's not necessarily saying, I'm going to make this like this. It's saying, what does this need to be? And how can I work within the environment of myself and what nature is showing me to be that? And the great part about that is that when you're operating in that way and in that lifestyle, you don't have to worry about opposing forces, or you don't have to worry about, you know, uh, opposition. Because when you think about it, if I grew up Christian, so sometimes I'll sprinkle a little bit of scriptures in there. But my parents were pastors, and so I learned a lot in the church. But the one thing that, I'll take away certain scriptures that just kind of like they feel like they'll just always be relevant to the end of time. And one is the scripture that all things work together for your good. And I love that because when you think about it in your life, if you're flowing with nature and not against it, everything's going to work for you, right? So that's what we want to see. So when we get into gardening and looking at life by design, one of the things that comes up is soil. So I want you to think about before you can garden, before you can put anything in the ground, you have to make sure that your soil quality is good, right? So your soil is your foundation. And so within yourself, I want you to, and if you have a notebook, take notes. And, these are some things that you're going to have to kind of journal and do on your alone time. I'm just kind of giving you a format of how to walk through this process. And I was telling the ladies earlier, I said, you know what, an hour probably isn't enough, but I'm going to give you guys what I can. And then I'm hoping that you guys can walk away and maybe just plan out some time for yourselves to go through and figure out, these are areas that I can support myself and I can, get into what is in my soil. you know um, I'll give you a prime example. And I'm going to be vulnerable. I'll share some vulnerable moments because I feel like it's really important that we have a full understanding of what this looks like in action. So for me, I opened up a restaurant in Minnesota, and it was great. It was amazing. And it took way more out of me than it should have. But everybody from the outside looking in, it looked great. It's like, she's in the news. They're doing news reports on her all the time. She's always having huge events, selling out. Everything looks great. But the foundation, the soil of what I was building on was rejection. I had something to prove, and I needed the people around me to see that, I can do this. My soil was tainted. And so when you have tainted soil, when you go and you make decisions, you're going to make them based on that foundation. So there's areas where I shouldn't have made certain decisions that I made, but I made them because I was working from a soil root of rejection. And so when you think through that, like I said, what does that look like? So let's break it down. Um, when you have soil in a garden, so you can grow corn, you can grow you can be growing green beans, tomatoes, whatever. But when you go pick it, you could actually be eating a tomato or corn or whatever that's infected. And you don't know that it's infected, but you can infect everybody around you because a lot of times a good crop and a tainted crop can look the same. And so I say that to say my results looked the same. They often look the same. They looked like good quality, solid results. But in my soul, I was being robbed of my self identity. I was being robbed of my peace. I was tired often. And so there's a lot of things that you can do. Um, and I love Tammy's comment. She said, and oftentimes tainted crop full of GMOs even look better, but it's not. Yeah, that's what do we call it? An Instagram filter? Yeah, so there you go. But you guys get it. And so a lot of times when we have something that we are trying to build or hold on to, that maybe it doesn't reflect our greatest good or what it is that we're trying to do, because like I said, that foundation and that soil is tainted. We have to kind of begin to do the work. So today, I'm going to show you guys some ways to do the work, right? And to get your soil how it needs to be and what that needs to look like. And then you can take these practices and you can carry them on and you can apply them when you're doing all kinds of things, from building relationships to doing your business review, your quarterly review. These are just things that you can use in your own personal life, even in parenting. I have 3 children and I use this stuff all the time. So I'll go over the few little things that we're going to go over. So we're going to go over engagement. So this is going to be, how you engage with people, how you engage with yourself, nature, all of that. We're going to talk about relationships. We're going to talk about meaning. We're going to talk about accomplishment, and we're going to talk about positive emotion. And accomplishment and positive emotion are related in the sense that they're it's like that the result that you yield after you've done the work, right? And so we're going to put these in terms of permaculture. So we'll start with number 1. So engagement. So with permaculture, one of our principles is use the edges and value the marginal. And so one of the things that I like to look at is like roots. And so when you think about a plant and how it grows and when it goes into the ground, a lot of times we'll just put things where we feel they should go, instead of like fully understanding and getting like the whole back history of like, why do I want this plant specifically here? Are their roots going to have enough space? So let's pause there. Um, we're all women, so I believe we've all had to experience competition in life. And unfortunately, this world is a world that kind of like pits us against each other, unfortunately. But competition is a real thing. And so nature even competes. And so sometimes we have to look at, well, why are we competing, right? Or what's in that, the foundational piece of the competition. And so when we look at plants and roots, roots only compete when they don't have enough space. And so I want you to think about your space and who you are, and if you're giving yourself enough space to shine, if you're giving yourself enough space to be who you are, right? And so when I say that, yes, that goes down to foundationally, are you confident? Do you love yourself? And there's a lot of work that goes into that. But I want you to think about that, because women who love themselves and are confident, they can have deep roots, but they also give enough other women around them enough space to shine. And they also give the women around them enough space to put their own roots down and to do their own thing. So think about if you're crowding your own space. Think about if you're seeing who you are, if you're really acknowledging who you are. If you're like me, I'm a competitive person. And I always tell people, like, even my best friend, I tell her all the time, I'm like, if she does something that I just think is incredible, I don't really get jealous, but I'll say, I'll find ways to like, I'm gonna do that, and then like kind of challenge her to do it even better. And so we flow like that, and it's good. That's the relationship that we have, and it works, and it's great. But and it with that being really symbiotic, we're able to play off of each other. And so there's plants that do that. There's plants that empower each other. They're companion plants. They work together. But then there's also, like I said, plants that they need more space and they need more room. So I want you to really look at yourself and look within yourself and spend time finding out, are you giving yourself enough space to be you, to shine, to grow? That might seem so basic, but it is really important. Um, so now, one of the things in permaculture is in knowing and exploring your zones. So in permaculture, we have zone 0, which is where you reside, and then we have zone 1, 2, 3, and it branches outward. And so with that, your zone 0 would be, like I said, who you are. And your soul, how you care for your soul, that's what you should focus on daily. And then once you go out to zone 1, that's kind of like your where your children may reside, your husband, your wife, your friends, that area, the people that you kind of touch in, or keep in touch with on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And then once you go outside of that, that might be like your community. Maybe that's like your Facebook world, or maybe even your job and things like that. And so I bring that up because when you talk about zones and understanding your edges, one of the things that we lack, or I think as women we fail to do, is we spend a lot of time feeling as though we are the ones that are supposed to keep everything in harmony, and we are the ones that we're supposed to make everything flow and be right. And when we get into that thought process, we neglect our edges. And when I say we neglect our edges, what I'm saying is we have a community, and sometimes there's things on the border that we don't really look at, or people around us that we don't pull on, right? And so that also goes into my next point of engagement, which is use and value diversity. So with plants, it's very important. Like when you think about agriculture, I automatically see like a cornfield, and then there's just like all this corn for like miles. It's just corn, right? Or cotton or potatoes. But what I want you to see, I want you to think about diversity. And so in your life, sometimes when we think about diversity and inclusivity, we're thinking about things outside of us. So we might be thinking about, oh, this business needs to be more inclusive or more diverse, or I'm happy that Target is now having more ads that are, including other types of people, and we think like that. But how can we within ourselves create diversity and inclusivity? This could be as simple as sorry, I got distracted by Tammy's note, but I completely love that that comment, that we're exhausted from trying to keep the peace, trying to make things harmonious for everyone. And that's realistic. And this kind of goes into that of just being, allowing ourselves to just be, and practicing that detachment of just letting everything be, right? So, into the diversity. So getting more into diversifying your own self and your own space and your own life. A lot of times we find our comfort zones, and we, like I said, we neglect our edges, and our edges will be those spaces where we kind of like, I feel like that's where we keep things we waste, right? And when I say waste, what I mean is things that can empower us, things that can encourage us, things that can bring out the best side of us, but they're not what we're used to. And so, when you're doing life by design, one of the things that I want you to consider as we move into talking about relationships and observing and interacting is producing no waste, right? So, when you're using your edges and your marginals, what does that look like? That looks like me showing up in a space like this. It looks like me, maybe this isn't the typical space that I would be in, but it looks like me showing up in a space like this and not worrying about, um, can I provide everything that everyone on here needs? Do I have all the tools? But just showing up as me, as myself, and saying, I'm going to provide what I have to offer. And it's the same way in reverse. You showing up in spaces that you might not commonly find yourself, and sharing. We talk so much about, even as Tammy just said, about keeping the peace, and I think Rachel had mentioned this earlier about just like the tiredness, the exhaustion of trying to show up and be these powerful women every day. But sometimes it's just a matter of you just showing up in a space and just being who you are, and then maybe making one connection, having one conversation. You never know how somebody else's insight, or who they are, or even how they grew up. You know, it's funny because I recall just having a conversation with a woman once, and I just remember her telling me about like how she used to run a brothel. And I remember like all the judgment in my mind, like at that point in time in my life, just the judgments of, I can't believe she ran a brothel, and just thinking that, but not stopping to think, wow, for her to be here having this conversation with me, and having come from that, how much can I learn from her? How much can I how can she be that witch hazel in my own life, right? How can she pull out some things in me by telling me the things that she's overcome? And so it's really about, when I say produce no waste, what I'm saying is you're taking the time to really step outside of who you have been, and almost kind of like living vicariously through someone else, just hearing and setting aside your own preferences, your own notions, who you are. So I want to give you a fun fact. I want to talk about the Santo tree. And so, when we think about, I don't know if you guys burn Palo Santo, but it's like, for me, it's like, it's amazing. But the only way you can grow a Palo Santo tree is the seeds have to first pass through the digestive tract of a pigeon. So you can't just grow a pet. You're not going to just get a seed and just put it in the ground. Like, no, you're going to dig through pigeon poop, and then you're going to put a seed in the ground and grow it, right? The reason why I wanted to bring that up is because, when we think about producing no waste, so many times we take our testimonies and we take our experiences, and like even the woman who she ran a brothel, right? And she was able to share this with me, this information. She didn't live in shame about it. She trusted me with the information. We all have experiences, and those things, pigeon poop to a Palo Santo tree. You know what I'm saying? So I want you to see and really get into who you are. And like I said, I'm not here today to tell you to do anything. I'm really just here to show you how to see yourself from a different perspective, and how to, whether it's you're in your garden, or whether you're in the house and you're spending time with the kids, or whatever, it just having that moment where you pause and you just really look around and just see your environment, and see nature, and welcome nature's signs and its signals into how you live your life, and use that to empower you. Let that be your daily witch hazel. How is it going to bring out the best of you, right? So, relationships. So we went over, produce no waste. And so I want to go back. I want to backtrack a little bit to observe and interact. So observe and interact, when I said do not be a colonizer of your own soul, right? So we're born into this world, and I personally think like who your child is when they're born is like who they are, and then like slowly we turn them into something else, and then they have to spend the rest of their life trying to become who they originally were, right? Which is so unfortunate. Like, I'm like, oh God, help my parenting skills. But for the most part, I say this to say it is hard sometimes to do that self-discovery and find out who we originally were and who we originally were raised to be, and what our soul is and was and all of that. And so that can be work. It is a lot of work, especially when every day we spend a lot of time being bombarded with social media and different things that kind of force us to try to and I said this earlier with Rachel and Tammy, is social media forces us to choose if we're going to love ourselves literally at like every moment. We have to like make that decision of like, am I going to love who I am right now, or am I going to hate her and say I got to be somebody else and make changes? And so ideally, we want, in every time those moments arise, I want you to look at yourself and I want you to say, you know what, I'm looking at a picture that doesn't look like me. It's nothing like me, and that's okay. It's beautiful, but that's not me, and I'm in love with myself, right? And so you don't need to change, you know. And so in being in that place, so I don't want you to be a colonizer of your own soul. I don't want you to damage that inner goddess. I don't want you to deny her of her power. I don't want you to deny her of her beauty, her individuality. There's so much there that we literally don't have time to unpack. But but I want you to, when you think about when you judge yourself or someone else, or when you get ready to, I want you to think about like, are you actively colonizing your own space, your own soul, your own friend? So we don't want to be those people, right? So now I'm going to get into meaning. So one of the principles of permaculture is design from patterns to detail. And so the big picture, let's talk about the big picture. When we think about the way in which we structure our life, there's so much we can do to discover our own pattern. We each have our own pattern. I have my own pattern. You have your own pattern. And so you can't go and look at somebody else's pattern and say, I need this to be my pattern. That's not how that works. You have to do your self discovery and find out your own pattern. And so I'm going to just give you a couple ways to where you can find your own pattern. One of the ways I use regularly is I use this cycles journal. I love this thing. You can tell I love it because it's greasy. So clearly I've been like eating and using it at the same time. But it's great because you can go through and you can track your moods, you can track your body temperature. I mean, just all kinds of things. But what you should be doing before you kind of sit down and say, this is who I'm going to be, this is how I'm going to be, you need to spend 30 to 60 days paying attention to yourself, how you feel every morning, and writing that down. um, Even what you're eating, for the day. I know sometimes we do it when we're talking about diet, but you need to do it as a whole. What was my mood like? Did I argue with anybody? Did I feel depressed? Was I upset? How did I interact with my family, my friends, my kids? Just a really intensive getting to know who you are, because we spend a lot of time. It amazes me how like some people that I know, like they can tell you Kim Kardashian's personality, what she wore last week, all these different things, but they can't tell you what day of the month they feel their best. That's important. That's important, because when you give yourself that ability to pay attention to who you are and to learn who you are, you set yourself up for success. What does that mean? What does that look like? That means that some of you are entrepreneurs, right? So are you going to schedule um, yourself to do a performance or a speech engagement on the day of the month that you know is your worst day, right? Or are you going to set yourself up where I'm going to go live on these days, or I'm going to host this event on this day because I know emotionally that I'm going to be my best self. This is the day of the month where I can speak the best and I have the best, form and version of myself, right? Or let's even think of it like this. We're women. We go through stuff. We go through ups and downs. If you have a leadership spirit, then you definitely probably have had fallout with friends where you've maybe told them things that they didn't want to hear, or they've told you things that you didn't want to hear, and you kind of stood your ground. But you've kind of, if you've had any of these experiences, then you definitely have the ability to come back to situations and say, you know, I'm going to provide closure for myself in this way or that way. But guess what? You don't want to say, I'm going to go schedule a meeting to figure out some stuff with a friend on the day of the month where you are the most irritable and you have the lowest tolerance for BS. And no, that's not smart, right? So when I say design from patterns to details, what you're going to do is you can design your life. You can sit down and say, you know what? I need to have a real tough conversation with a friend or a family member, or even one of my children. And you know what? I don't have to do it right away. You know, we're not dying today, you know, and if we did die today, is this conversation that important? Maybe I can wait, give myself 30 days to find, you know, find that best day where when my throat chakra is the most aligned, and I can sit down with this person and I can have a really good solid conversation where my heart is open and my throat is aligned. And so, you know, things like that. And I love Susan. She said that she's always tired during the full moon and she knows she needs to rest and restore. Things like that are very important. Like just knowing these days I cannot do XYZ, but these days I will do, and structuring your life in a way where you're handling what's important. I promise you that granted it might feel like the whole world's going to fall apart if you don't have one conversation on, you know, the day maybe you're have going through a breakup or whatever and you feel like I got to talk to him tomorrow. Give it a month, sis. You'll be okay. I promise. Okay. So think about things like that, you know, and plan those things out, right? So, and then another thing, so too, integrate rather than segregate. So I want you to think about when you are designing your life. You know, we already talked about diversity and things like that, but I want you to think about when you think about integration, I want you to think about like just you're not on an island, right? So you're not out here by yourself. I know sometimes, like I said, we're women. We feel like we have to figure everything out. We have to do it all, and it's all on us. And if we don't figure it out, Trump's going to be back in presidency, and the whole world's going to just set on fire. That's what we're afraid of, right? But that's not what's going to happen. So when I say that, what I'm saying is all you have to do when it comes to dealing with hard things or feeling like the weight or that stress, and I'm sure, and I know you guys get a lot of this information because you're in, you know, Rise You. I know they're pouring this stuff into you, but I kind of want to just give it to you from a different perspective so that when nature is showing up and it's speaking to you, that you can actually formulate a actual sentence or a message within yourself, a mantra that this is what nature is saying to me right now, and this is what I need to work on and do or focus on or receive, right? So I'm going to tell you about mushrooms and trees. And so this is really, I love this fact. Sometimes we think about like trees and animals and different things, and we automatically assume that you know they have their own language and or maybe they don't have a language or whatever, but we just assume they're on their own little thing and they're kind of apart from us. Or maybe you're like super in nature and like you're in the mushrooms and you're laid out and they're just telling you the whole weather forecast for the next 6 months. I don't know, we're all different. But one thing I love about mushrooms is if you ever go into like a forest and like let's say hypothetically like let's say like it's a mile long or something like that, and a tree gets cut down. And so when that tree gets cut down, the mushrooms begin to communicate to each other that there's a deficit on that side of the forest, and they literally communicate to each other, and so they go and they make up for the lack of you know, whether it be oxygen or whatever's needed in that side of the forest, and they begin to do the work to make up for what's going on, right? And so I love this analogy because when I think about us, sometimes we'll go through things and we're like, we can't even see what's happening, right? Mushrooms keep our whole planet alive. The mushrooms and the bees. Why don't we have that conversation? We have the birds and the bees. What about the mushrooms and the bees conversation? But so for us, it's really important that when we go through things, I don't know if you all deal with anxiety or just the frustration and the feeling of like when you're going through something, feeling alone, or even having to call that friend and feeling like, you know, this is the only person I can talk to. I want you right now to really, like, even if you don't fully understand what I'm saying, but to just receive what I'm saying. that all things are working together for you. If a tree gets cut down and mushrooms begin to go crazy to make sure that that tree, that there is whatever needs to happen to supplement that tree happens, I can guarantee you that your soul is equally important, and that when you go through something hard, when you go through something tough or frustrating, you might not be able to see it. And like what's a mushroom to a tree, right? You might not be able to see it, but I can guarantee you that there's things in nature that mother nature is moving and doing things and working for you. They can feel the energy of, my sister is hurt, my daughter is hurt, let's supplement, let's do what we got to do to make sure that she's covered and she's good. And just knowing that no matter what it looks like, all things are working together for you, I just feel like that is very important. And to understand that when you think about integrating rather than segregating, and just welcoming whatever comes and happens, that it's okay. You don't have to formulate a stance like, I'm not going to let this happen, or I am going to let this happen, or you just be. You just be, and I can guarantee you things will work together for your good. So, um, I'm going to go into, let's see, where are we at? Okay. We're going to go into accomplishment. And then once we get into accomplishment, we're going to kind of go into the positive emotion. And then we're going to do some breakouts. So, accomplishment, obtaining a yield. So return energy on investment. This is like obtaining a yield is so important. Like at the end of the day, like nobody does everything for nothing, right? And so even if we go and we volunteer, when we go volunteer, we have this feeling of gratitude and joy, and we're actually bettering ourselves, right? We're feeling good. We're walking away feeling empowered, love, all these different things that happen within us. Gratitude is the greatest, like, highest frequency. So you're putting yourself on your higher frequency. So these things are happening when you're doing things. So what I'm saying is, when you talk about accomplishment and when you are designing your life, and you're finding meaning and you're building relationships, and you're observing and interacting and you're doing all of these things, we always have to kind of go back and we have to do a review, right? And so when we do this review, we need to make sure that our energy is being properly distributed. So one of the things Tammy mentioned, she mentioned, just the women being tired of, trying to keep the peace, and so kind of really sitting down and literally mapping out, okay, this is what it looks like for me to keep the peace. What am I getting out of it? What kind of return am I getting on this out of this? Does it make sense? Or am I going to get a greater value? Maybe there'll be a little bit of an upset in the beginning of me just not keeping the peace, but am I going to get a greater return or a greater value if I do something different? Or if there's a different way, a different form of execution. My friend, she makes fun of me all the time because I literally have an Excel spreadsheet for everything. I go Excel spreadsheet crazy. She told me she's moving to Atlanta, and when she called me and she was telling me about the different apartments, she's like, "What are you doing? Are you listening?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm creating the Excel spreadsheet. Open your email." And so she's like, she opens it and there's all these different charts of, like, this one has this and that. But I say that to say it's okay to sit and to actually, I'll say it like this: you're not a bitch if you sit down and you say, this friend, this relationship, this is how much energy I get out of it. This is how much energy I lose from every conversation. Can we reevaluate? Can we have that? Can we wait till the right time of the month on the day for me to have this conversation and clearly let them know these are things that I need for this relationship to maintain, or I need to pull back. I need to do some self-evaluation. Those are forms of self-care, right? These are forms of self-care. Sometimes we like to think of self-care as bubble baths and pedicures, but self-care is eliminating some relationships that need to go. Self-care is having tough conversations with your children. Self-care is sitting down with your boss and saying, you know what, I don't know about this, or sitting down with an employee. Like, these are all great forms of self-care. And once you feel the release, the woman that you pull on and you draw out of yourself is even greater, more empowered. It's a blessing. It's a beautiful thing. So I want you to think about that, the return energy on investment. So are you getting back just as much as when you're putting into something? So think about that. And then I want you to think about creatively responding to change. No more getting stuck, right? So it's okay to sit and to reflect, to give yourself time to understand, like when you come through something maybe stressful or traumatic or sad. But when you once you understand yourself and you understand your own pattern, you're then able to stop and you're able to say, okay, maybe you just lost a family member or a parent, and you're sitting there and maybe you've been depressed, maybe you've been sad, but you give yourself those 30 days to kind of just like review and go over things. But on this day of this month, this is when my energy is highest. So I'm going to pull out all those things that remind me of my mom and get me excited, or my dad or whatever, and they get me just whatever. And I'm going to just lavish in the fun, in the love of that. It is okay to literally, um, systematically structure your healing, systematically structure your wealth, systematically structure just the things that bring out the best of you, right? That's that it's I my ex-husband would probably call it manipulation, but I personally think it's beautiful and it's amazing, and you can do that. And it makes you, like I said, it brings out the best parts and best sides of yourself. So um and like I said, you don't always have to act fast. Sometimes things can wait. I believe I'm a firm believer. Give it 30 days. You don't got to deal with it right now. It's not that serious. And so, um, let's see. Right now we're on to positive emotion, but there's one I wrote down a point, and I want to make sure that I say it. And I'm not really sure which factor it was for, but we'll throw it into use, small and slow solutions. So when we think about positive emotion and pulling on positive emotion and bringing out positive emotion, um, sometimes we tend to want like immediate results. Like we live in a world where it's like instant gratitude and we want this right now. And yeah, some people it works for them. Unfortunately, for the majority of us, it doesn't work for us, right? And so things take time. Good things definitely take time. And so in permaculture, we believe that you should use small and slow solutions. And so, like I said, you want to make sure that you're tracking your behaviors, tracking your mood, tracking your emotion. Um, and then one of the things I want you to think about is, as we talked about, like making sure that you understand that there is no waste, right? We have a zero waste policy with our own soul, right? So when we think about that, I want to bring up compost. So when I first started learning about permaculture, I was so excited about compost. And people would be like, why do you care so much about compost? I went out to Punta Mona, Costa Rica, and Tammy loves compost too. Good, I'm not the only one. People think I'm crazy sometimes, but I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about. You might not like what I'm about to say. So when I went out to Costa Rica, I was so interested in the compost, but particularly in the humanure. And so if you don't know what humanure is, it's when you take your poop and you turn it into soil. And you use it for, growing your food and things like that. And I just remember people saying like, why are you so into like humanure? That's so weird, that's gross, whatever. And I'm like, well, you know what? At the end of the day, if I don't have anything, like if I'm not wealthy, if I don't have like acres of land, if I don't have all this and that, at the very least I can turn poop into soil. Like if that's it, if that's all I can do, that's something, right? And so, but that's a beautiful thing. So I just like I was talking about the Palo Santo, and like who's really digging through pigeon poop to grow a tree? But realistically, sometimes we gotta dig through the shit, right, to get to the gold and to really get to who we are. And sometimes it's not just the digging through it. Sometimes it literally is the giving it time to grow and to change and to formulate into something. Like I want you guys to walk away from here believing and knowing that everything within you it's gonna produce good. Like every bad argument you had, whether it's you sitting down and reflecting and taking and pulling from that and saying, you know what, you know I told her off and I handled that situation, but I could have did it like this, or I could have dealt with this like that, whatever. But I want you to pull out who you are. Like I said, that witch hazel. I'm being that witch hazel for you right now, but I want you, when you wake up in your body and in your mind and all that stuff every day, I want you to pull on your own inner witch hazel, and I want you to pull out that diva, that goddess, that queen. And I want you to say, even her shit is everything, even with that she can grow some amazing things, right? So that's who I want you to wake up feeling and being. That's how you do life by design. So just for the sake of time, I'm gonna move through this last little piece really quickly, and then we're gonna go into breakout groups. I'll end on the applying self-regulation and accepting feedback. So I'll talk about catching and storing energy. So do not envy your highs. So when I say, um, I'm looking at Rachel's comment. If you guys are looking at the comments, they got some good stuff going on in there. But catch and store energy. And so when I say catch and store energy, do not envy your highs. So a cycle is a cycle for a reason. When we think about nature, right? Spring, summer, winter, fall, those things are all relevant. They all do something for the earth. And so I need you to make sure that you're looking within and saying, am I in my inner spring? Am I in my interwinter, my fall, my summer? Your summer is usually when if you ladies are still going through your cycles, it's usually your ovulatory phase. So your summer is when you're excited, and all cognitive thought is like gone, and you're like, that boyfriend that you were like done with, you're like, come over. That's your inner summer, when you're excited and anything goes, and you're taking chances and risks. But when you get into that inner winter, and you're into that place where it's time to kind of chill and relax and just let things be. And who said, I think it was one of the ladies had mentioned, just when the moon cycle happens, that, or when she's in a certain cycle of the moon, that she just needs to rest. That's her winter. And knowing that you just need to rest. And there are seasons like that, there are weeks like that, there are days like that. And so when you spend time getting to know what that is and what that looks like, you will continuously respond to it instead of going against it. So she knows she's going to rest, right? I want you to think in that same format. What season am I in my day, in my life right now, in my emotions? How should I creatively respond to that? And don't envy your summers. Summer will come back around. So even though you had that excitement and that fun, and whatever, and maybe you're in a fall phase where you're planning for the next few seasons, or whatever that looks like, you need to make sure that you're resting, in your soul. And so if you're supposed to rest, or if you're supposed to be at your high, or whatever that looks like. So now apply self-regulation and accept feedback. And after I go over this one, Tammy's going to put you guys in breakout groups, and I'll tell you guys what the exercise is. So what you want to do is practice positive engagement with others. So one of our greatest challenges can be growth, right? And when I say growth, like, sometimes we're forced to grow, or sometimes we kind of do the same thing in different forms, and then we call it growth. But for us right now today, the focal point I really want to be in this exercise is really applying self-regulation and accepting feedback. And so when we think about that in terms of permaculture, you want to continuously review your environment. What am I holding on to that I can let go of? What am I overdoing? What am I not doing enough of? Um, think about things like that. And then on top of that, just spending time actually pulling on and asking for feedback. This could be something that you do when you're like I said, when you're pinpointing what's the best time, of your month to do these things. It could be, when you're at the height, when you're feeling good about yourself, and there's nothing nobody could tell you to like break your spirit, but you have a lot of energy. Sit down with a friend that you really trust, and um, share, and then ask them, what do you admire about me? What area can I grow in? And take those things and use it to bless yourself, basically. So Tammy's getting ready to put you guys in groups. And so in your group, what I want you to talk about, or I want you to share with each other, is what are you avoiding right now? What area are you avoiding right now? And then what are you just you're rocking it. You know, you're doing great. You're your best self. All back here. I hope you guys enjoyed your breakout rooms. And so if you want to share, you can. I'm thinking maybe we should share probably in the chat if you feel comfortable doing it that way. Because what I really want to do is, I know we only have 2 minutes left, so and I want to make sure that I'm courteous of your time. So what I want to do is, I was going to start off with a prayer, but I'm going to close out with a prayer, and I'm going to do a prayer. Oh, Clarissa, you wanted me to share the information for of the new class. I definitely will. If you want, I'll share it in the Rise U. And I'm actually hoping that the facilitator of the class will come and do a class with Rise U. She's amazing. So yeah, so we'll talk about that later. But so what I want to do is, I'm going to do a prayer, and this is just really like a prayer to Mother Nature, and just, just really sharing what I want for you all just moving forward, right? And I was going to kind of do it based on the chakras, but I'm going to just free flow. So, and you can close your eyes or leave them open, whatever works for you, but I'm going to close my eyes. I want the full sensory experience, right? So, I just want to say thank you for being here. And so, I want to just call on Mother Nature. And so, Mother Nature, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity to share with these women, to even have the privilege of being able to be a part of their day, a part of their time. I pray, like as we spoke on earlier, just like the Palo Santo tree, that they take everything that has been hard and rough and deemed as negative in their life, and that they use it for the positive, and that they see it flourishing as into this healing tree. Not just a tree for themselves, but a tree for others, their community, to be able to pull on and hold on to effortlessly. I pray that, just like Witch Hazel, that as they are engaging with themselves on a daily basis, that they're pulling on the best part of themselves, while still acknowledging some of the things that maybe they can improve on and become better in, but never neglecting their own soul or who they are. I pray that you continue to nurture the relationships that they build with Rise U, and even the other women here in the group, and even outside of the group within their community, that they find themselves engaging, and not wasting the resource, not wasting the friendships, not wasting the energy, not wasting the time, but really being intentional about their encounters. And also recognizing that they are a soul and a vessel and a plant that needs to be watered daily. I pray that you walk them through the necessary steps to check their own soil, to look into their own soil, and to get to the root of what they're building on. If they're building on rejection, if they're building on trauma or pain, that they can dig that up. That just seeing that and knowing that and acknowledging that is the first step to beginning to dig that up, and to beginning to change that. And so I pray today that, as they continue to walk through just this journey that we're all walking through of life, that they continue to nurture themselves, and that they find themselves becoming their best, brightest self on a daily basis. Amen and Ashe. Yay, ladies. It has been wonderful. And it might seem like, oh, this woman is crazy, but I love you all, and I'm so happy you're here.